Hello and welcome to Priscilla Nwikpo show today. Hope you're all doing well out there. As I promised you this week, I have two great guests. We're still going to be discussing and asking the question, are we truly seeing change? The question has arisen out of what we've seen recently globally. First, we were dealing with coronavirus, and when the coronavirus pandemic hit, we began to learn that it is those of us who are of the African and Caribbean origin who are being most affected, especially if you're in Europe or if you're in the US, especially the UK, I should say, and the US. And then we moved from there. We all witnessed the unfortunate situation that was the death of George Floyd in the US, and that caused what I've since referred to as a global civil rights movement. We have seen protest after protest after protest by the Black Lives Matter group. And the whole question that is being asked is, how much longer can we go on with the level of racism that exists, not just in Europe, but also in the US, particularly against people of African origin? That doesn't mean that if you're from the Caribbean, you're not of African origin. You are. And so, today I have two guests with me who are going to share with us their experience. They both work in different parts of Europe. They're both within the political system in Europe, and they're going to share with us their experience, not just living and working in Europe, but also on the matter of Black Lives Matter and the protest that has taken place in their respective countries, and the effect and the impact of that. Are we truly seeing change is our question today. So joining me today to answer that question in the best way that he can. My first guest goes by the name of Clement Klutz. He is based in Germany. He's also the CEO of KCM. I believe I got that right. But if I didn't, he will correct me in a moment. And he's also a member of parliament, regional member of parliament in Hamburg. And his particular area of expertise, which I thought was, fantastic for today's conversation, was integration and inclusion. So he's my first guest today. And my second guest, pardon me, my second guest is in his third term as councillor in Belgium. And, again, his particular area of expertise, he's a seasoned politician. His particular area of expertise is, why has it escaped my head? I've just gone blank for a moment there. So bear with me. Let me just consult my paper. So his particular area of expertise is social affairs. So it's very interesting what they both do in their respective countries, and it's interesting. It would be great to know, the impact that they're having within their respective offices and on their community at large. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me to the program, Mr. Clement Klutz, as well as Mr. Collins Nweke. You're both welcome to the program, gentlemen. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you so much, Priscilla.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you both for being here. I'm going to start with you first, Mr. Klutz, if I may, because you are, wearing two respective hats, as I made mention there. Not only are you a businessman, but, you also sit within Parliament. And I think it's important that we sort of do this, let's do this genesis, if you like. Tell us a little bit about your experience. I know you come from Togo. So tell us, your experience in Germany when you got there, coming from Togo, and how you're finding it.
Yes. First of all, Priscilla, I really appreciate the debate you have initiated this evening to talk about racism across, our respective countries. Talking about George Floyd in the USA to Europe. And like you rightly said, I am sitting in Germany. Here where I am since almost 23 years now. And when I came to Germany in 95, something like that, I came as a refugee because of the situation prevailing in Togo at that time.
Okay.
And because of the political, political difficulties we had in Togo since then, and me as a human rights activist at that time at the university, I had some problem with the system, and that is the reason why, I came to Germany. And when I came here the first time, my idea was how can I add a value to the society? And that means for me, at the beginning, to first of all to learn a language, because the German language is not something everybody can learn, somewhere else, and studying for the language. And I get back to the university to study, business administration. And that is where my experiences with racism started from. In our everyday life, you face situations where you just see that the color of your skin is a problem. You have to live with that fact.
Right.
To give you very concrete an example, I'm talking here about my first years at the university,
Okay.
97, 98. I was in the second semester and I have to write uh, something about, in marketing area, uh, regarding virtual companies.
Right.
And I choose a topic where I have to work together with two white colleagues, German colleagues. Uh, we have different topics. The teacher of our professor gave us, and I was the one who picked this topic and this particular topic. But I have to add two people to myself to work on that topic. And the people who were interested, when they saw that I was the one who picked the topic and they have to join me, I'm talking here
They changed
in a,
them.
in a hall.
Yeah.
We were about more than 100 people. Okay. They said, one of them said, if it is with the one, talking about me, he's going to work with, he better leave that. He doesn't want to work with me.
Wow.
I was shocked because the topic was about something we can really put our knowledge together,
Right.
To work on that. And I was so surprised. That was really on an academical basis what I experienced the first time. What shocked me is that our professor at that time, someone who has even taught in the UK
Right.
as a marketing professor, he didn't say anything to the guy. We were in the break and I went downstairs and he came to me and apologized because of the behavior of my colleague, And I was asking myself, why didn't he, say something about it directly to the person who didn't want to work with me? That is, I'm just making this concrete point to tell you that that is not the first time or the beginning. And in everyday life, you've been facing situations. That is what brings me also even to think about getting
Involved
to
in
politics, to get involved in politics.
Okay.
There are so many things we will talk about later, but that is just a conclusion.
No, I'm starting to think already that my 1 hour is so not enough. Collins, let me come to you. Tell me, what was your first experience of racism when you came in? Because I don't know about you, but for me, up until I got to Europe, the color of my skin was never an issue. When did you first become aware that you were Black?
Thank you once more, Priscilla, for creating this opportunity to, discuss this issue, which obviously, has been trending for a while. And I think it was more a matter of when, not if, what we have been experiencing in the past weeks, would happen. And
Right.
so it's a very interesting thing that, they are happening. One of the angles I like about a program such as yours is
Yeah.
that it keeps the issue in the mind of people. It sustains the conversation because we need a conversation in order for us to then begin to, find the ways going forward. So that is one of the ways which that your program is a good one. I mean, my story isn't quite different from that of Clement in terms of coming into a system, looking at a number of things. Everywhere you turn, you see things that remind you that you are different and you are being treated different. You see things that could be done differently. Now, there are two choices. Either you sit down somewhere and complain to high heavens, or you make the decision that you don't like what you are seeing and that you are going to look for like minds and begin to work on those things that you don't want and change them to how they should be. Now, I started that first and foremost, not immediately through party politics,
Right.
through actually, community organizing. I came in contact with quite early in my time here in Belgium, over 20 years ago. Came in contact with a number of like minds, and we started organizing around, issues first and foremost around policies, because I came to realize that most of the issues we were dealing with regarding racism, discrimination, and all of that were systemic and also quite institutionalized. So if
Yeah.
you need to deal with them, you need to do so from the roots, which means you need to target the policies. So I
Okay.
started
Okay.
off through
Okay.
community.
Bear with me for just a sec. Obviously, before you got to the stage where you started looking at policies that will make a difference, there is an in between. How did you overcome those challenges that you found on a daily basis? How did you overcome them to the point of saying, right, we need to now begin to look at policies to bring those changes?
Well, the point is that you have to be of a certain character to be able to overcome the daily dose of racism that and discrimination, of course, that you come through.
Yeah.
Now, those who give up easily, and the vast majority of us give up easily, they never get around to doing anything. But those who are resilient, who feel that racism I experience, the
Yeah.
more the imperative to work on the roots of it. Those are the ones that actually go ahead to make the difference that is required. Because I mean, the question I asked myself basically was, what have all the guys who have come before us, what have they been doing? How come they all kept quiet? And then I said to myself, well, because in the meantime I became a parent, I said to myself, well, this is not a kind of question I will be comfortable answering my kids when they grow up into the same situation that I have found myself unchanged. I should be able to point to them and say, I did this, and did this, and that is why things are better today. So that was the essentially the motivating factor. Yes, it was everywhere, but with resilience, one makes that decision that yes, it may be a losing battle, but it is one worth fighting.
Now, so in effect, you developed what most of us have had to develop over the years, a thick skin, effectively.
Absolutely, absolutely. A thick skin, because you need it so that the negative impact of the racism and discrimination
Yeah.
don't actually penetrate the thick skin that you develop.
Okay. So here in the UK, for instance, one of the things we see a lot of is we see the challenges, the struggles between the police and effectively the Black community. For instance, Black young men, boys, are more likely to be stopped and searched. Is there a similar experience with the Belgian police when it comes to the Black community, and most especially Black young men too?
Yeah. What you have in the UK is a child's play compared to, mainland Europe, specifically Belgium, Germany as well, when it comes to,
When you say child's play, wait,
So now let me try to illustrate it with this. The
please.
history of migration, that is Africa, UK,
Yeah.
back much longer than the mainland Europe, Belgium to be specific. So what that meant was that, or is that, the British people are getting used to seeing, Black people, and somehow beginning to adapt. Now, the history of migration, Black migration to Central Europe, is much more recent. So, as a matter of fact, you can actually say that out there in the UK, you guys are over 2 decades ahead of Central Europe, and then that is an issue in terms of dealing with it, Africans and Europeans.
So because we've had more of an influx here, if you like, as I suspect, the whole empire thing has a lot to do with it also. I'm just bear with me. Let me just quickly come back to you, Clement, for a moment there. Collins is telling us that in Brussels, in Belgium rather, it's child's play, the kind of racism that is experienced over there, to what is experienced in the UK. I accept that you haven't lived in the UK before. At least I don't think so, as for a long span of time. So what is the racism like in Germany? Would you use the same terms to say, it's you can't compare it to what we experience here in the UK?
Do you mean racism referring to the police or generally?
Just in general, what happens in general to people from the African community, Caribbean community, that will not necessarily happen to a white person. What happens, some of the things that you've witnessed or you've experienced, for instance, would you use the same term to say, it's a lot worse?
I would say that the experiences are the same. Talking about what we are experiences as blacks in Europe. I had an interview with one of your colleagues from the Deutsche Welle not long ago after the death of George Floyd, and I was asked the same question: if what happened in the United States can also happen here in Germany, and I say, of course, that can happen. That can happen, and some days later, 2 days later, I've got a video here in Hamburg, my city, where a black man has faced the same challenges like George Floyd, only that he's not dead.
Wow! Thank God.
But it's to tell you that these things are can happen everywhere regarding racism toward Black African or African descent.
Okay, so effectively it is the same thing. What I want to hear from you, because you've gone on to set up a successful consultancy, and not only have you been able to do that, but you're also, as I mentioned earlier, in Parliament. Tell me, what were some of the hurdles you had to overcome in order to be able to not just establish your consultancy, but for it to have thrived to the point that it's at?
Two things. I agree completely with Mr. Collins regarding the resilience he was talking about.
Right.
We are here in societies we belong to, because now I'm talking about 23 years. It's a very big part of my life I spent here in Germany. My kids are German. They are born here. And they are Black kids. And I don't want someone to look at them as something, someone else who doesn't belong here.
Right.
So everything I'm doing is a fight for the next generation. So completing my studies here is to show that, yes, Black people also are able to do the same jobs, to have the same competencies, to fight for the future, to belong to this society, and to add value to the society. And second, like Mr. Collins said, if you don't enter the system, you can be aside and criticizing. You have to be inside to make your opinion known by the people. I have to admit, I'm very blessed and very lucky that I have some fantastic people in my party. I belong to the Christian Democratic Party of Angela Merkel, the CDU. And I was the first Black to be nominated as a candidate in the state parliament election in Hamburg. That's something that's never happened before since Germany exists. So Hamburg is a very big state, the second biggest state in Germany. That's the first point. Second point, not everybody likes me in the party, but I have also people who love me. Let me give you a very concrete example again. Before the lockdown of Corona, I came back from a trip, a business trip in Africa, and 2 days later I have to fly back to France. I have a conference in the French Parliament, and then we have. I'm also a member of the board. The board or section of the party in my district. And we have our last, if I remember, that was our last session before Corona lockdown. And we went to this, I am the only Black, among all of the people there. And we went to the meeting, and, I was annoyed about some things, going on. And I can say also explicitly, it's, I feel like racism. And I talk very openly about it.
Okay.
And the leader of the section tells me, Clément, you know what? You have to know that we here, we love you. For me, it's like, a very heavy burden that something took out from my shoulder.
Yeah. I mean, I sorry to butt in there. I appreciate that they said they love you. I think it's fair to say that most of us have that experience with, whether it's our white colleagues or white friends, they will say that they love us and, but it's just that they still have hang-ups when it comes to the wider community. So you are accepted, you're okay because we're familiar with you. But then because we're not familiar with the wider community, we're not so accepting of them. So did you feel for that moment that, yes, you like me, but what about everybody else that looks like me?
Priscilla, to be honest with you, I was really surprised and amazed. Last time I went to the protest after the death of George Floyd,
right
here in Hamburg. In the middle of this Corona pandemic, I've been to this protest, and I was really, really surprised to see how many people come out to support the movement. And they are white people, not Blacks. It's to tell you that there is like a wind of change in society. People are getting to understand what racism means and which damage that can create to us in the society. So this support, we have to acknowledge it also. Not everybody is racist, not at all.
Oh yeah, that's
But I think that the most important thing is that people are getting to understand that we are facing a situation as blacks and they are supporting us. And for me, it's the most important thing we have to think about, and this positive aspect to carry and to go on forward in the future.
okay. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to come back to you, but let me just come to you very quickly, Sir Collins. You know, Clemens just mentioned there about the Black Lives Matter protest that took place in Germany, and the volume of people that came out, and the fact that the people who came out were not just Black people. We've seen that across the world to an extent, and I know that in Belgium, for instance, the statue of King Leopold was brought down. Um, because of the protest. Now, tell me what that felt like for you and the significance of that for people of African origin in Belgium.
Um, there has always been support from a small minority of European friends and colleagues. But you see, those are the converts. They are the converts because those are not the people that we should be preaching to, because they already understand what it means. They are already very sympathetic to the cause.
Mm.
Now, what we expect is that them joining hands with us will be able to reach the critical mass of Europeans, of white people, who need to get the message and begin to adapt their ways. And I
Right.
think it's a major challenge facing us. Now, talking about the symbolism around tearing down the statues of Leopold II and other statues in the community that remind us of the brutality against Black people. I think there are three broad ways of looking at it.
Mm.
I mean, I say this because I had been in the forefront in actually seeking, first and foremost, that the statue of Leopold II, that is actually in my own constituency, in my city, be torn down as well. That it should be pulled down. That
Okay.
was, one of my first political actions that I took. And then in our local parliament, I also led, a very spirited move for a street to be named after Patrice Lumumba.
Yeah.
Of course, the history of Congo and Belgium,
Absolutely.
goes back because of the colonies and all of that. But let me tell you where I stand at this moment. Now, I started off supporting the idea that the statue of Leopold has no business, being glorified in the manner that it did. And then we got
So how did you feel when you saw it coming down? Because obviously this is something you've been fighting for.
mixed.
The protest
Well, it didn't
before it
it
happened.
didn't come down in my city. Yeah? It came down in Brussels, and that's fine. So anywhere in Belgium that is happening, it's a good thing. Now, my feeling was mixed in the sense that if the statute came down and nothing else changes, we are not moving from step one to step two. Now, it's been pulled down, in my view. I mean, right now, I mean, in the past, I probably, represented other views. But at this particular moment, it coming down is more symbolic than actually moving our course further.
Forward. Okay.
Another, yeah. So
No,
it's
go
a
on.
good thing, but I hope it doesn't stop there. That's the point.
That's the point you're making. Let me now go into, because you're you don't you've been campaigning for this to happen. It has finally happened, and you had mixed feelings. I mean, I think it's a natural experience. I suspect when it's when you when it happens, you end up with mixed feelings, and you're thinking, oh goodness me, you were expecting to feel excited, but then the excitement didn't quite come in the same vein. Now, you have been, as I made mention in the introduction, it's for you, it's all social affairs. So within your office, this is your third term in office, and it is social affairs. I want to know from you, what are some of the things you are doing within your office to bring change, um, you know, and how that has been received or welcomed, or, accepted, and if it has been accepted at all.
Yeah. Um, in general terms, I walked into a situation during my first term where you have colleagues talk about you in your presence as if you are not there. Things like, what is he doing here?
Wow.
You-
You're being elected.
and then you have others, who simply ask a question, I mean, loud enough for you to hear, but pretending as if it's being whispered in someone else's ear. Does he really understand the Dutch, the language that we're speaking, So, I mean, we laughed about all of those, and we start a conversation, and, gradually those things go away, okay?
Mm, mm,
Because they start getting used to you. You start proving who you are. I mean, you
right.
still have, of course, a pocket of individuals who are the diehards, no matter
Mm,
who you are, no matter how you illustrate your efficiency, your effectiveness, and all of that, they
mm,
simply won't, accept you. Those are not the ones you need to bother with. Now, you also have a situation where there are a good number of well-meaning individuals, and I'm talking now about the core social affairs issues where we deal with individual cases, individual files, okay, who understand the Africans in a way that is discriminatory, that is actually racist, but they don't actually realize it. Now, what people like me bring to the table is you come in from an angle, uh, understanding the Africans being one of them and being in the middle of them because there is daily interaction, but
mm,
also understanding the mindset of your colleague, knowing that he or she is not actually racist, but unexposed, not at least not sufficiently to understand some nuances. Now, you bring in those nuances, and then they are like, oh, really? Oh, that's the way it is. I'll give a very simple example. Now,
do.
when we invite people, say there is a hearing and we feel a file is, important enough to deserve a hearing, and you invite the person for a hearing, and then at the end they leave, and then we have to debate amongst ourselves. Now you will get some colleagues who will say, "Wow, this person was telling a lie," and the reason I have come to that conclusion is because all the time he or she was talking, he was looking down and was avoiding eye contact. Well, in some parts of the world, Africa, for example, fixing your eyes on somebody that you are supposed to be having a word with is meant, is
Yeah, it's
seen
going to be
as
rude.
disrespectful.
I understand, but then it's not the same culture in Europe. So
Exactly. So you see, when you discuss those things and try to put them in perspective,
right.
it helps in the understanding gradually, albeit, but it helps, to understand the situation. We still have a very long way to go, but I believe that by being involved and mobilizing more people to be involved,
Mm,
I think it's one of the ways of moving a bit beyond the symbolism of tearing down a statue or even renaming a street Patrice Lumumba Street in Ostend, like I have been agitating for many, many
yeah,
years.
yeah. Okay. I hear what you're saying, and we're going to come on to that. But let me just say to everybody that's watching, if you want to contribute to this conversation, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you just go through to the comment section and put your views there, ask your questions there. I will put it through to my guests. And if you're watching us via Facebook, also you can do the same in the comment section. It'd be great to hear what you're thinking, and what your experiences have been. It matters not your skin tone, because this is about all of us trying to understand what is happening, and with understanding we can all better coexist. Now, let me come back to you, Clement. We've talked about you progressing into parliament and being the first that was nominated into a German parliament. Congratulations to you, sir. Haven't gotten there. We've heard Colin's experience where people will whisper in his presence as though he wasn't there, wondering if he could speak the language. I know you made mention of, the importance of speaking the language much earlier, when you were responding. Let me just ask this question though. I know also that your area of expertise is in diversity and inclusion. So tell me, that's diversity and inclusion is something that's so dear to your heart. What are some of the things you've been doing within your position in Parliament to have more diversity and to have more inclusion in Germany?
Mm. Let me correct the point. Not the first in Germany, but in Hamburg, so that that must be clear for people. As the first African nominated for the parliament elections in the state parliament in Hamburg. Now, coming back to your question, I wrote my thesis at the university about diversity management, and at that time, my professor was telling me, Mr. Kusa, you can forget about it because we are not far yet in Germany. I'm talking about almost 16, 17 years ago. But I've seen that coming. I've seen that coming because we belong, in this society. Like I said before, we have kids. They are growing up, they belong to the society here, and we have to pave the way for them. And diversity management is not just a topic we have to, observe politically, but also in companies. And that was my area of expertise when I was studying. And I can say that is also one of the reasons why I enter into politics, because I've realized that we are not far in politics regarding diversity. What with the companies are practicing, the global players were practicing already. But talking about my effort to impact the policies, I am a substitute in the Commission of Social Affairs and Integration and
Right.
Inclusion in Regional Parliament in Hamburg North.
Okay.
I already make some suggestions.
Okay.
How can we move forward regarding integration, regarding inclusion, regarding fighting racism? But you have to bear in mind that we are in the minority. That means we are not the one making the policy. We are not the one, ruling
Yeah.
in my, in the parliament. We
Sure.
make suggestions and propositions, but if the other parties don't agree with us, we can't move forward. That is
So
the reality of the fact. Yeah.
So, what are you finding when you make these suggestions? Are you finding cooperation from other parties? Are you finding cooperations from your fellow members of parliament, even though they're on the other side, for instance? What kind of cooperations are you getting? Are you getting any at all?
Honestly speaking, it's very difficult. Very difficult to get, to get your voice heard by even my fellow party members. And I don't blame them, because we are talking about racism, and the one who is wounded is the one who can feel the pain.
Right.
Your brother, your sister can say, "Oh, I'm very sorry for you," but you are the one feeling the pain. So I guess they don't understand what racism means. They don't know what we are feeling as blacks, victim of racism. It's not easy, but like Mr. Collins said before, we have to keep on fighting till one day our voice may be heard. I played for the fact that more blacks, more Black African must get involved into politics because we need that. We need people who understand that we cannot step aside and criticize him, but we have to get in the game and to get in the system and make our voice heard. Only through that we can make changes we are expecting.
Let me ask you this: is it a case of your colleagues, and I know everybody's not racist, because obviously the system and the structures that have been in place for hundreds of years has impacted whether you're black, you're white, and it's impacted our reasonings and so on and so forth. But is it the case that people deliberately do not want to change, or is it a real case of ignorance? Because there's a difference between, not wanting to make the change. I hear a lot of, I'm reading and hearing a lot of white people saying, show me, teach me, what do I need to do? And there are those who are, very highly educated, who are saying, I don't know, teach me. And then you think, is it that you don't know, or that you don't want to know? Which one is it? Because by saying teach me, in my view, it makes that person feel like, well, I let me show that I care. But then is it the real situation of I don't know and I really want to learn, or is it a situation of somebody just being ignorant and not wanting to do it?
Look, I think it's very a little bit difficult to judge both sides. I mean, I can, be put myself in the mind of other people, how
Right.
they think, why they think like that, and
But do you
why
get
they
a
do.
sense? Do you
I
get a sense?
Sorry.
Do you get a sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Do,
Of course, I think that it is more. We read a lot about white privilege.
mm,
Okay, I I really believe that some people are scared that they are going to lose their privileges
oh, yes.
if they open up to people
Mm,
like us in the society. That is a matter of fact. We can't deny it.
okay.
But at the other hand, I also understand that there is a lot of ignorance because some people don't even, like I said before, people if you never experience something, you can judge it.
Yeah.
And the movement we are seeing now with the Black Lives Matter,
Mm,
it's very powerful. To give you an example, our chancellor, Angela Merkel,
yeah.
she set up a commission to work on that topics, racism in Germany, to put out policies,
To deal with it.
to deal with that. Okay.
Okay.
My
Now,
critic, sorry, but there is a very important point I'm making also, in politics and everywhere. The one point I criticize is that we blacks who are, let's say, victims of racism, we are not at the table to discuss it. Because I can understand that someone who never deal with racism make policies about racism without the one who are concerned. So that is the only point I think we have to work on. But I just realized that it's like a feeling now in the air going on that okay, we have to deal with that issue, and it is a very good starting.
okay. Now, you said there that, your only criticism is that there aren't sufficient Black people getting involved. Is it a matter that they're not getting involved, or a matter of they're not being allowed? Because if people feel that they're not welcomed anyway, I suspect that will make a lot of them not want to get involved.
Oh
What has
yeah.
your experience been?
Oh yeah. No, you are completely right. Mr. Collins said it also before. Sometimes you feel like, okay, is it worth it?
Mm,
The whole fight? I better give up, and concentrate on something else. The reality of the fact is that, yeah, you have to deal with this challenge also. And talking about resilience is
Right.
very important. I know people who wanted to get involved but said, okay, that will bring anything because I won't be accepted, in the party, and so they don't have the courage, to continue. So you are completely right. We have to deal with all these kind of situations also.
Mm. Okay, thank you so much for that. Let me come to you, Mr. Collins, because we've just heard there from Mr. Klutz has told us that in Germany they've set up a commission. I know that here in the UK, there Prime Minister wants to set up a commission, and he's received a lot of backlash because obviously we've had so many different reports with recommendations, and they're yet to be implemented. So here in the UK, we say no, we do not need another commission. What is the government doing in Belgium to address this issue of racism, especially now that the issue is at the fore, as we've seen it in recent times?
Um, it's an ongoing business. I mean, you need to understand that politics is a game of interests, and ultimately, the core question that even the most progressive, political groupings
Mm,
ask themselves is, how is this going to be received by the electorates?
right.
Now, we have seen a very high degree of, progression to the left, even the extreme left, extreme right of the political divide.
Mm,
Now, those on the left, that is the so-called liberals, progressives, are also concerned about that. Now, the way it plays out is that inevitably, for them, not for me, I can tell you that for free, they adapt their most progressive policies to suit the mood of the time. So what that means is that things that they actually clearly see that it should be different, they accept it because otherwise they will lose power. I will give a concrete example with the Patrice Lumumba Street that I had mentioned earlier. It was a
yeah.
dossier that I inherited from a colleague and then put my heart to it. At some point, we were very, very close to it until, it was then a matter of, okay, let the new election take place, and then it will be a foregone conclusion. But then we have some, conservative groups within the current coalition who actually do not want to hear about it. The individual politicians themselves don't quite have a problem with that, but they do have, their supporters that
They're
have something
different.
terribly wrong about that, and they are driven by politics, by racism, as a matter of fact. Now, if you look at the other hand as well, in terms of accomplishments, now you need to realize one thing: when you are elected as a black person, myself also being the first, not only African Belgian, but the first non-Belgian born person to be elected to a political office in my constituency. That just tells you that we are just making a start, in things that in the UK has started more than 20 years ago. So I got elected not with the black or ethnic minority vote. I was elected by Europeans who believe that, yes, I have something to offer. So I need to also serve their interests. And now, one thing one has to then do is you need to be very careful in the files that you throw your support behind. So take, for example, issue of healthcare. The threshold was so very high before my time. And then I thought, well, healthcare is an issue that affects everybody, black and white,
Mm,
African, Europeans. But the point is, if you are at a lower end of, the financial economic ladder, you have
right.
it's more difficult. So that is an issue that, if solved, it will affect a large number of ethnic minorities because they are overrepresented in the poverty index.
Right.
So I put a lot of energy in that, of course, with the support of my colleagues, and we were able to work out a system where there is a center that you simply walk in, and no money paid, you get treatment, because people stopped. There are people who are, who have it so financially difficult that they actually postpone going to see the doctor, even for very essential things, because they cannot afford the payment that you need to make to the doctor. That's on one hand. Now, on the other issue, say for example, employment, one of the issues that one of the points that we have been agitating for, and again with the support of colleagues, in our local parliament here, is introducing the quota system, because the ethnic minorities are overrepresented in the unemployment figures. Now, there are, of course, lowly educated, unskilled white people who are unemployed as well, but even the highly skilled ethnic minorities are struggling with employment. So we thought that we could start off with a system whereby if a quota system is introduced with a city authority, who is actually the biggest employer in our constituency, if they could lead by example by saying, okay, 10% of the population is constituted by ethnic minorities. Okay, in that case, the personnel situation, the personnel figure should also represent that. So if we are employing, say, 1,000 people as a city council, 100 of those must be ethnic minorities. And don't tell me where you're going to find them. They are there, and we know from with examples from places like Canada that once you put that policy in place, well, if it means re-education, whatever it means, go out there and you will find them, retrain them, or whatever you need to do, but just deliver as the law says you should. So those are ongoing conversations. They are not completely solved. Some have already been achieved. Take, for example, housing. It used to be an issue that the criteria for being registered to have access to social housing is such that you have to prove continuous residence here, or maybe even a tie with Ostend city for you as one of the criteria. That automatically excludes people who migrated from somewhere else in terms of those who get priority allocation.
Parts of Belgium. Okay.
Yes, indeed. So those are policy, fundamental issues that are systemic, and working on them helps to solve other bigger, smaller problems.
That's really good to know. I also want to ask you this question because
Yes.
it's something that I've heard it said so many times since the onset of this whole protest and what's been happening, which is that it is not for Black people to fight against racism, but it's for white people to become allies. And sorry, let me get that right. It is not for Black people to dismantle racism, but it's for white people to fight as allies alongside Black people to dismantle. What is your thought on that? Very quickly, because time doesn't permit. Do you agree with that statement? And if so, what should the Black people be doing?
I agree totally with that. Like I said earlier on, the few white people are already allies. They are converts that you do not need to be preached to. We need a pool of new people, and part of what has to happen is sensitization. Well, it doesn't matter who initiates it. Black people could initiate it, but Europeans need to pick up on it. Take, for example, myself. When my boys come back home and say to me, Daddy, I was told this and this and this in school, which contradicts, some information that you had given me at home, pointing on some sort of, cultural conflicts. Now, what I respond to them is, well, systems differ. It's not a matter of one being better than the other. That is the way it's done here, and yes, you can live with that. Now, the question is, what are my co-parents, my counterparts, what do they tell their kids when they come home with such questions bordering on cultural conflict? Do they re-educate them in the right manner, or are they dismissive of cultures and practices that are different from theirs? Because that is the beginning of, solving racism. When people do very thorough self-reflections, begin to pass on the right information to the kids from very young age, and then be involved so that we are all partners in raising a new pool of young people who will be colorblind and who will have a very broad, perspective on issues of culture and race. I think it's important to start from there.
Thank you. Now, my last question for you today is this. You've made mention about some of the things that you're doing, within your constituency, and some of the proposals that have been, put before, that have been put forward, and waiting for assent, as it were. Now, given what we've seen so far, what are some of the steps that the government of Belgium are going to take today, are taking right now, as a result of this protest that's happening, that has happened, to be able to deal with the issues? I'm speaking, Belgian wide, not necessarily just to your constituency.
Yeah. What we do not have, fortunately, is a situation where government commissions a report and the recommendations of those reports are put aside, or a new a new commission set up to just some sort of window dressing. I believe that one of the things that we'll begin to see in Belgium now is more consultations, and actually ordering in more reports, more investigations into race-related issues, especially how government could solve the issues of systemic or institutional racism. It's not as if it has been quiet in that domain all these years, no. But I believe that what is happening globally now, occasioned by the death of Floyd, will actually accelerate that process. Of course, we have to be prepared for resistance, because the resistance of the far right is always there. You are going to continue to see that, but I believe that a larger pool of people who want to see racism gotten rid of is beginning to grow, and that is good for the whole mission.
That's very encouraging to hear. I won't go into that now, but a few years ago I went to Bruges, and I promised myself I'll never return, simply because of the way I was treated. Let me let me come back to you, Klutz.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was shocking. It was shocking that in present day, I think it was in 2014, that in present day 2014, somebody will shut the door of a restaurant, and say that they're not open and not serve me. I wasn't born during the civil rights movement, but I felt like I was in the civil rights movement for sure. Let me come to you, Mr. Klutz. The most important thing is, yes, we've seen all of this that are happening, and there is an awakening, and people are speaking up and rising up and wanting to learn more. Fantastic. But tell us, what are some of the steps, as I asked you with Collins there, you heard, what are some of the steps that the German government are taking now? I know you made mention of the commission that's been set up, but are you confident that when that report comes back, that it will be implemented? And has there been other reports in Germany on this issue previously?
Yes, of course, of course. It is, I would say, a very big step forward, what we are seeing now in the political arena with this commission from Angela Merkel, from the German government. But I have to also acknowledge that, as someone who has worked in the years before as coordinator of migrant organizations German-wide, we are a little bit far, and we can make a lot of propositions to, politics has to get really involved in that process and make policies and laws to change things.
Right.
So I am quite confident for two reasons. Like I said before, when I went to that protest in Hamburg, I've seen how many people went out, almost 14,000 people. And most of them were white people who are supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. Second, that the politics has, take that topic now and said, we have to deal with it. We have to do something against that. It's
Right.
very, very encouraging. And maybe the third point is we have no choice. Germany has no choice. Europe has no choice because of the demography.
Mm.
Things are changing. So we have to do so that everybody feel like at home, so that we can build a very strong society together. Only together we can make that.
Okay. Now, tell me this. What should our African and Caribbean diasporan communities that exist in all these different European countries do for this change? Because obviously, the protests are not going to go on forever. And we're not all going to participate in the protest. But what can we all be doing? What are some of the things that we can be doing respectively to contribute to ensure that the flames don't go out, but it continues to burn and there will be change ultimately?
Look, my point was always since 7 years now that I'm sitting in that parliament is that our people have to go out and vote every time we have elections. We can sit down and
Mm,
criticizing something, and Mr. Collins make the point about far right movement, parties, the far right parties.
mm,
So if we don't go out and vote for the democratic parties, you know, we leave the field to people who are against us, who want to fight us, who don't want us in the society. So
mm,
voting is one of the powerful weapons we have in the
mm,
hand. And second, maybe a point that is maybe specific for Germany is that people must learn the language. It's very important because you can only discuss, argue with someone if you speak his language.
yes.
Okay, so the language is for me very very important, and that would be my second advice to our community people here.
But I thought Germans advocate it's part of you must learn the German language if you wanted to get a job or something like that. I thought that was, a requirement, standard requirement in Germany.
Yeah, of course, but I can also tell you that don't not everybody take it seriously.
Ah,
Not everybody. People. I think very uh, short-sighted. Are very short-sighted and just want to get a job very quickly. And money and okay. But if you want to have something lasting in the society, the language is very very important. It may be
mm,
difficult. It may
mm.
take time, but it's also an investment in the future for one's self and his kids.
Okay.
Mm.
I have so many more things to talk about with both
I
of you.
know.
Like, I feel as though we haven't scratched the surface because I feel that there's so
Well,
much more that we need to say.
it's the beginning of the conversation, I believe. So there will be many more of this session.
Excellent. Thank you for giving me your time for permitting me to ask you to come again. Mr. Klotz, let me ask very quickly. When is that report by the Chancellor Angela Merkel due?
I think that the commission is still working on that.
Okay.
I don't know exactly because I don't belong to the commission, but I just have the information also from other channels. But I will discuss it with my political colleagues and to see how we can have our impact in the decision making.
Excellent. I will be
Mhm.
grateful if you can keep me updated so that we can
I'll let you know
when the time
definitely.
comes. Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be good to know. Sir Collins, what can I say? Thank you so much for taking the time out, giving us your time and being here with us today. We really appreciate that. And we appreciate all that you're doing over there in Belgium. I do hope that we will not, you can whisper to the people of Bruges um, that that when some of us come to visit for some chocolate, that we will be treated with respect and treated as human and not have the doors shut on us. So I'll be grateful if you can pass that on to them. But thank you for.
Be rest assured. Be rest assured.
But I
Be
have to
rest
admit,
assured. A lot has changed.
Oh, since 2014, I don't know. I felt like I was in.
Oh yes, I mean,
I felt like
as a
I
matter of fact,
was right.
don't worry. I'm going to pass your message on to the mayor of Bruges, who happens to be a very decent man, a friend. And I'm sure he
You know
will
what?
chuckle. Because
That warms my heart. Thank you. Because
that
I
was the
said I
brute
will
of death.
never go there again. You know, myself and my friends and my
You got
daughter.
to come back. You got to come back. Brute
No,
has changed.
that experience wasn't nice. It was a day trip and they were not kind. But say things are changing and I want to be.
Recognizable, but
So,
it's changed.
so on your invitation, I will try them again.
Absolutely, you got to.
I'll give them 5 years. Thank you so much, Mr. Klutz, for taking the time out and sharing with us experiences and what is going on in Germany. I think it's important for all of us to understand what's happening around Europe, and it's important for us to learn. And to see how we can work together. It's been a real honor to have you both join me today. Thank you both of you very much for your time today. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Hope to see you very soon again in London.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I'm sure that we'll have this conversation again.
Absolutely. I appreciate
Thank
it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to everybody that's tuned in. Thank you for all your kind comments. The true Nigerian says, no, we are not seeing any change. He doesn't believe that change is going to come. Mary says, well done all. And I have, Bisi was saying, he's thank you for the program. And so was Mark Atta over on the YouTube channel. Guys, like my YouTube page, share it. Join me weekly. We want to be having conversations that matters, that affects you, so that we can bring about real change. If we are not doing something about it and we let the flames go cold, we'll continue to suffer. But for today, though, I'm going to say thank you and sign out. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. I'm still asking the same question next week. Are we truly seeing change? My guest is going to tell me from her perspective, I hope from, what she does, if we're likely to see change. Join me then. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.